With USC coming to Lincoln this week, the Huskers and Matt Rule get another opportunity to get that pesky, can't win a game versus a ranked team monkey off their back. But it will not be easy. Achievable, perhaps, but nothing ever comes easy for Nebraska. I'm really excited, though, to see the Mackay Lemon versus Sayer Wright matchup. I hope that he gets that assignment like all game. Just stick to him in man. Even watching Andrew, I feel like Jaden Mayava is a really impressive quarterback who could beat us alone, but I do think that he will give Nebraska opportunities, and we're just going to have to cash in on one, maybe two again. He's not completely mistake-free. And then I would say that the path to victory, if there is one, seems like winning the turnover battle. And then though it's kind of unfair to ask Eckler and them to do it again, some sort of magic from special teams.
Yeah, the first thing to me is this whole not beating ranked opponents thing. Like, is it true? Absolutely. Is it a dumb statement to make? I think that's even more true than the fact that Nebraska hasn't. When you look at Nebraska has been at a historical low as far as the football program is concerned, not even making bowl games, not even getting 500 records. And within those seasons, you're going to have scheduled games against teams that are ranked. Of course, you're not going to win those games. Like there was a stretch of winning 3 and 4 games. And in those stretches, you're going to have sometimes a ranked Iowa, always a ranked Ohio State, almost always a ranked Michigan. Wisconsin was ranked. Illinois has been ranked a few times. Like you're going to run into where ranked teams show up. But if you're a bottom of the barrel program for 10 plus years, no shit, you're not winning those games. Like to me, that's just the dumbest thing in the world. If Nebraska was perennial bowl eligible and these ranked teams come up and they lost every one of them, okay, that's a little bit more of a statement to make. But we fired Scott Frost the day after he lost to Georgia Southern. If you can't beat at the time Power Five teams, let alone Power Four teams now, I don't understand why that's such a oh man, they got to get this monkey off their back. No, they have to get to where they're good enough to have a shot in hell at competing, let alone maybe possibly winning some of these games before I'm going to look at that like, yeah, man, it's one of those things they just can't get over the hump. Can't get over the hump of Minnesota and PJ Fleck. Makes tons of sense. That program has had its ups and downs, even when it's humming and it's doing its thing. It's not a powerhouse. It's not a high ranked team or whatever. So like this whole argument, or not argument, but this thing that always gets brought up of Nebraska can't beat a ranked team. Well, when Nebraska was winning championships, they were beating every ranked team that was put in front of them. The last ranked team they beat was Oregon, and that team under Mike Riley wasn't as bad as the teams at the end of his tenure and through the Frost era and the early on in Rule. And I think we lose sight of how bad the program's been for how long. Like Matt Rule's worst season was his first year when he literally didn't have a quarterback. The guy he ended up leaning on for quarterback is now our tight end. And that worst record he put up here was the best record between the end of the Riley era and through the Frost era. So, I mean, the improvement is happening. Again, I know I harp on this a lot. It's not at the pace a lot of people want. Everybody's under the impression that Kurt Signetti's are everywhere in the abyss, just floating around, waiting for teams to grab them and flip their program overnight. And that's not realistic. So that whole statement to me is crazy. The the interesting things for me on the USC front is when I watched the Illinois, the Michigan, and the Notre Dame, and I watched every play of the Michigan and the Notre Dame games. I'm kind of torn if it's what Riley wanted to do or what the opponent made them do, because I feel like when they ran the ball a steady amount, like they did against Michigan, Nebraska, in a similar way they played Michigan, I think it's gonna be a very, very long day. But if they're trying to take shots downfield, Maeva's gonna hold the ball longer, not threat with the run as much like they did against Notre Dame. I think you're 100% right. There's gonna be opportunities for interceptions. We'll get more possessions, but I don't see why they would come in and do that. There's a stat that I saw that Lincoln Riley is 0-7 with USC when traveling 2 or more time zones away. And obviously that pertains to Saturday night. And another thing people keep talking about is the weather difference because it's supposed to be in the upper 30s to low 40s come kickoff. I don't think that has so much to do with it, man. I think the Notre Dame game in the rain, and I think that was a big factor on their pass game. And, with some of the sloppy passes, the turnovers, things like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's going to be rain. I don't think 38 degrees or 40 degrees in a football game is the equivalent of Tennessee coming up and playing Ohio State when it was -5 or whatever it was last year in the playoffs. So I think that's kind of being overblown. We'll see. But I mean, when you're in the middle, you're actually on the field and you're playing. I mean, me personally, maybe it's because I grew up here and always played football here. I would much rather play a cold game or a cooler game than 80, 90 degrees when you're running around doing your thing. So I don't know, just a couple things that I keep seeing and hearing people talk about that I think are kind of being a little overblown or, too much is being made out of it. To me, this game's going to come down to the same things we keep harping on. They have the number one offense. So you have to try to keep them off the field. They're going to anticipate the run game. That's been our strongest asset all season. So can you execute a quick pass game especially when they swarm and try to crowd the box? And then can you feed Emmett enough to extend drives, even if you don't score, so that you don't blink and look up and you're down 21 nothing. And on the other side of it, our defensive line is not built like Michigan or Notre Dame's where they can create much push, get a lot of pressure on Maeva by themselves. You're going to have to utilize your linebackers and your DBs are going to have to tackle. And in that situation, you're going to be in a lot of one-on-ones and the sloppy tackling that we've seen pretty much all season. But it seems to get uglier some games than others. But if that's an issue at all, I think they're going to get smoked. I think USC could score every single drive they touch the ball if the tackling looks anything like it has the last couple of weeks. They're going to get to the outside. They've got really good running backs. They have great receivers. Maeva's good. Their offensive line is athletic. So, I mean, even on those screens, if you look when a guy catches the ball 2-3 yards in front of the line of scrimmage and he's going, a lot of times when he does a cutback or he gets lateral, there's already an offensive lineman that's gotten that deep and is running downhill helping to block. So if you're having a hard time wrapping up and finishing tackles and you add in, oh, by the way, you're going to have an offensive lineman coming downhill at you, it's going to be a big problem for Butler in that defense. So they haven't really fixed it. I mean, they've tried to address it, and some games don't look as bad as others. I don't have a lot of comfort going into this game that okay, now they're just gonna be locked down when it comes to tackling, especially in space like that with the athletes they have. This is going to be a far more athletic team than we saw really all year. I mean, even you can throw Michigan in that mix. Speaking of Michigan, as bad as they beat them, I think Michigan kind of screwed up by trying to throw as much as they did. You saw the success that Notre Dame had with Love, and Nebraska's defense has taken a lot of heat all year for the amount of explosive plays or the big run plays they've given up. That's kind of been USC's problem. Notre Dame had some big runs. They didn't score on all of them, but it got them into scoring position and they were able to finish it. When Michigan got their points, there was a big busted run play. I think they're susceptible to it. Their defensive line isn't great. I mean, it's good. And like to your point, when they played Michigan, they weren't getting bullied and pushed around. But there's some issues that they have of their own when it comes to tackling and when it comes to guys being just a little bit out of position and it making kind of routine plays turn into big plays. So I think if you can keep Emmett going, but not just be so one dimensional that you're only handing the ball to Emmett, I think you have a good chance for success in the ground game. And then again, if you can mix it up and have a little bit of a quick pass game, I think your number one goal is keeping their offense off the field and owning as much time of possession as possible. That being said, you have to score. You're going to have to put points up. They're averaging like 40 points a game, something like that. So you're going to have to compete with them as far as scoring, but you're going to keep yourself in the game longer if you're not going 3 and out, and especially you can't lose the turnover battle. I would assume Corcoran's going to be your starter on the opposite end of Pritchett. But with Katua out, Prohaska out, I don't know what they're going to do rotational wise, getting guys in there. But hopefully, if you can stay run heavy, it's a little bit more downhill blocking and not trying to backpedal and keep guys in front of you because everybody seems to be struggling with that in different areas. My biggest concern, oddly enough, is the defense, like how well the defense can handle. Like you said, they have for sure one of the best receivers in the nation, and it's not like it's him and no one else. Kind of last week we played Northwestern, they had their stud receiver, not a lot of other threats. All of their receivers are as good or better than him, and there's multiple guys. They go two tight end sets a lot, which allows them to run, allows them to utilize those guys in the screen, and then they kind of lull you to sleep and put those guys down seam routes or corner routes. And it's just there's a lot to account for a defense that gets out of alignment a lot, that isn't gap sound all the time, and has had more than its fair share of issues on tackling. So I worry that the defense can keep their score low enough that our offense has a chance. But Maeva's not Malik Washington like when we played Maryland. Like he's a very athletic guy that didn't want to get out of the pocket and run. And Maeva tries to kind of do what Rayola does, where he extends the pocket and tries to hold the ball until a guy's open, but he will run if he needs to. And I can guarantee you that everybody knowing what they know about Nebraska's defense, that Lincoln Riley's going to try to run the ball a lot. And I think he's going to have both designed and will have worked on Maeva taking off and running on Nebraska, knowing how big of a weakness that is for our defense. Because ever since Sorsby did it, there was times here and there where Childs did it for Michigan State. Surprisingly, not a lot of quarterbacks have tried to take off and run on Nebraska, with that being the weakness that it has been. And I don't think it's a thing that, well, Nebraska fixed it, so you can't do that on them anymore. I think you just had a mixture of quarterbacks that don't run a lot and offensive coordinators that had more of an emphasis on using the quarterback as a passer and then using the running backs to try and get those explosive plays on us. So there's just it's not one or two things I'm worried about on defense. It's multiple things. Obviously, the offensive line on the offensive side is going to be a concern. But again, so much of that can be avoided if you just feed Emmett and have a quick pass game. I would really like to see Key and Hunter, especially with their physicality and the way they get in position and battle and win 50-50 balls. Just give them a heavy dose of quick passes, let them do their thing. And then I'm with you, man. Like I couldn't have been more wrong on how much I undersold Eckler in the special teams. Like I thought, yeah, it'll be better. It won't be as sloppy. You won't have as many times as shooting yourself in the foot. And all of those things were true, but also you're getting great production. And you saw what Notre Dame did. They took one to the house on them. Their special teams doesn't look great. So I mean, that is definitely an area that I think Nebraska can kind of exploit them and at least flip the field. If you can't get some points out of it, I mean, that would suck. It'd be nice to do that. That'd be an added bonus. But I mean, if you can just make sure that you have favorable field position and along with a smart offensive game plan to try and keep them on the sidelines, I think they have a good chance of at least being in this game. And, who knows? We saw Minnesota pound the piss out of Nebraska, and then you saw Iowa beat up on Minnesota. I'm not saying we're as good or better or anything as far as Nebraska. I'm just saying week to week, things look different. Illinois is not even ranked anymore, and they beat USC. Granted, that was at home with them traveling. So it's just rules 100% right. People don't want to hear it. And he was right when he said that too. But this isn't college football of, 5 years ago, let alone anything before that last time Nebraska was good. There's a lot more parity. Guys are making money to go to schools. Why sit the bench for 2 years somewhere where you can go make money and be the guy at a school that's perennially not been that good? Vanderbilt's the top of the polls. Indiana's obviously the top of the polls. Like it's not the same as it used to be, where the same 5 or 6 teams are in the top 10 every year. Like anybody can beat anybody. People have to be on their game. So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. USC is not a top 5 or top 10 team. They're a good football team. They're going to be one of the better explosive and athletic teams that we've played, but they're not unbeatable. Like you can go back and watch some of their games. Some games they do look like they're unbeatable. Some games it's like, yeah, we should easily win this game, but it's not going to be an easy win. I know everybody and their mom is assuming that USC is going to come in and win. I would predict USC winning, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I don't think it's going to be hang your hat in the third quarter and be like, dude, this game's been over forever. And it could be, but I think if Nebraska, and that's another thing, man, not to ramble on too long, but when Nebraska gets these leads in these games, it's like they take their foot off the gas, so they get content and let teams right back in it. When we played Minnesota, we were supposed to go in and handle them. When we played Cincinnati early in the season, not knowing what Cincinnati was going to end up being, but based off of the last couple years, that should have been a easier win. And they just don't look as good. It's almost like when they get into a point where it's their backs against the wall, they just play football. They just line up and try to beat the guy in front of them, and that seems to be when they play their best football. For however many consecutive games, almost all of our offensive production came early in the first and then all in the fourth quarter. So I think going in as the underdog, the crowd, they keep harping on that. Hopefully the crowd is loud and a raucous crowd and makes things difficult on USC. But I think Nebraska having kind of the chip on the shoulder, us against the world mentality going into this game will benefit them. I just don't know if it's going to be enough, man. What do you got for a prediction? I know you're doom and gloom.
I just think it's going to be an uphill battle. I hate to be negative going into these games. I'd love to at least like have a decent sized part of me that feels like can win, like this is a real opportunity, but I'm seeing like 31-21 USC. I wish I saw it differently.
It's so hard score prediction. I know I don't like doing score predictions. You try to go with like a margin of victory one way or the other, but it's just so hard because I could see this game coming down to a final drive or a chance at a final drive to tie it or take a lead. But I could also see if and when they get up and things aren't going well, and if they start to expand that lead at some point, I don't want to say Nebraska breaking, but kind of looking like they did against Minnesota, where it's like nothing's working, things are out of sorts, and especially if they start getting downhill running, it just that lead kind of grows. I If that doesn't happen and they can play somewhat sound football, especially on the defensive end, and I'm mostly referring to tackling, I could see this being a 6 point game, like a kind of close to what you're saying, maybe like a 28-34 type game. I just don't know. I think Nebraska's going to have to take points when they have them available. I don't think that you're going to be able to risk giving up a possession without taking points like we've seen in some other games early on where they're going for it on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. So that's probably not a good score. But I'm thinking if things don't fall off the rails, I would say USC by probably 6. If the crowd can be a factor for some reason, the cold and the time zone thing is an issue, and especially if Nebraska can win the turnover battle, I think you got a lot closer game. And then I think it's more of a 50-50 type scenario. But I just won't know until I kind of see what the defense is looking like the first couple series.
It would be so cool if we're both wrong and we get a win against a top 25 team. I think that would hype up everybody like crazy, including myself. But tell us what you guys think in the comments. Do you have your own score prediction for this one? We'll see you guys for the live stream on Saturday night. Until then, go Big Red.